it's pretty clear that the ultimate goal is the subjugation of Ukraine. And, based on Russian President Putin's statements, they will do so by any means necessary.
Well, let's now continue with our geopolitics, because there are talks between America and Russia happening at the moment in Florida. It's said that these are looking at a ceasefire proposal for the war in Ukraine. It's said that they are progressing constructively. That is according to the Kremlin's envoy. He's meeting with Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, in Miami over the weekend. The White House has proposed this peace plan to end the war in Ukraine, and President Trump said last week that an agreement was closer than ever. It doesn't quite feel that way, to be honest, but Marco Rubio said on Friday that there was still a way to go over this weekend's talks. Well, let's now speak with Cedric Leighton, who is a military analyst and a former Deputy Training Director of the US National Security Agency. Cedric, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, you bet, Aisha. It's my pleasure to be with you.
So, what do you think is happening at this stage of the game? Because we we keep hearing these words saying, "Oh, we're very close to getting a deal. We're very close to getting a deal," but a deal hasn't got over the line yet, has it? What's happening?
Yeah, no, it certainly hasn't gotten over the line. And one of the key things, Aisha, is that the fundamental positions of the Russians and the Ukrainians are basically diametrically opposed. And so far, there is no movement, in spite of going to Miami and having these talks with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the president's envoys, for these talks. The Russians and the Ukrainians are looking at things very, very differently. The Russians want to definitely take over the Donbass, and it's pretty clear that the ultimate goal is the subjugation of Ukraine. And based on Russian President Putin's statements, they will do so by any means necessary. That's their goal. That's their intent. The Ukrainians, of course, on the other hand, are looking at this as a matter of national survival. They do not want to be subjugated by Russia. They do not want to be part of a new reconstitution of either the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union, depending on your point of view. And it is pretty clear that until the Russians think that they cannot achieve their goals, at least in the near term, and that the cost-benefit analysis of continuing the war gets to be much less favorable, that would be the point when they stop with their quite maximalist demands. But until that time, I don't see any breakthrough is truly possible, at least not a lasting breakthrough. There might be, at some point, a ceasefire or something like that. But at this particular point in time, I don't see them, achieving that kind of breakthrough that would herald an age of at least a ceasefire on a more permanent basis or some kind of permanent peace. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I very much agree with you on that. And I think one of the things that is very striking, Cedric, is there's obviously a lot of diplomacy going on. There's lots of meetings going on. And we're having lots of meetings between the USA and Russia. We've got European leaders and Ukraine. We have the American sort of diplomats meeting with Zelensky. The obvious thing that is missing is Ukraine, Russia, and the United States all in the room at the same time. I mean, that's the obvious thing that's missing. Do you think we're anywhere close to that happening?
So I don't think so, because there has been a statement by the Russian envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, who's really a businessman, but he's, like Witkoff, engaged in these negotiations. The basic statement was that they don't see that kind of a three-way meeting occurring. The problem that you have is that the Russians don't really recognize the Ukrainians as an independent state. Now, in the past, there have been meetings between the Ukrainians and the Russians, brokered by Turkey, for example, and there continues to be efforts to do things like prisoner exchanges, things like that between the two sides. But when it comes to the actual conflict itself, the actual hot war that's going on now, especially in the eastern part of Ukraine and also the southern part, that is something that there's just no movement in that direction. And that kind of a meeting, it was an idea that was floated out just a few days ago. That kind of a meeting, I don't think will happen. Now, both Russian and Ukrainian teams are in Miami, so there is definitely some kind of indirect negotiating going on. But the Americans are in essence serving as interlocutors there. But if for there to be a face-to-face meeting among those parties, I don't see it happening either.
And what do you think is the real motivation behind the Americans here? Are they thinking long term? I mean, Donald Trump often views the world through the prism of commerce and deals and real estate. Is his lens looking forward to a point of American and US interests, commercial interests in Russia and Ukraine? Is that what you think the end goal is here?
I think so. When you look at the people involved, the personalities involved, they all come from the business world, and especially the world of real estate and commercial real estate in New York. And that's a very different mindset from the typical diplomatic mindset that you would see, either in London at the Foreign Office or in Washington at the State Department. And they are not looking at this from the vantage point of a geopolitical lens or what moves should be made on the geopolitical chessboard. What they are looking at is what kind of a deal can I make in the future? There are possibilities of energy deals with the Russians. There was a rather fantastic proposal that was put forward by, I believe it was Mr. Dmitriev, who's also the head of the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund, to build a tunnel between the eastern tip of Siberia underneath the Bering Strait into Alaska. And that kind of thinking is what is guiding I think the American point of view, and the Russians want to take advantage of it. It's not that they're guided by the same thing, although they don't mind it, but what they are guided by is whatever path would lead them forward to achieve domination over Ukraine, and that's what they're thinking about. And unfortunately for Ukraine, the Americans are kind of providing that avenue for the Russians, at least in terms of the rhetoric and the moves that have been made so far.
And look, Cedric, I just want to ask you about another important story that's been developing. And that's news coming in this afternoon that the US has intercepted another ship off the Venezuelan coast. This will be the third ship that they've been involved in. What do you know about this? What can you tell us about this?
So, Aisha, this is apparently a ship that is actually on the sanctions list. So the second ship that was intercepted was not on the sanctions list. So that kind of made it a little bit difficult from an explanatory point of view why this particular oil tanker had been intercepted. But this third one apparently is on the sanctions list. We don't know very much about it or whether it has actually successfully been intercepted yet. But what is understood is that this was a vessel that was docked in Venezuela and was on its way outside of that. Whether or not it was going to a destination in Asia like the second one is also unknown at the moment, but that's a high likelihood. Another possibility is that it was on its way to Cuba because Venezuela does supply Cuba with a portion of its oil. So those are the factors in play here. In essence, the move to use tankers as part of this, basically to use oil tankers as an economic point of leverage, is part of in essence, a blockade against Venezuela. And from a purely tactical sense and a strategic sense, it makes more sense to go after them than it is after purported drug boats, which are, first of all, small in nature, but secondly, don't really carry the drugs that are coming into the United States illicitly, not the ones that we're really concerned about. So it seems like the U.S. administration is refining its policy by going after the tankers. That could have a much greater impact on the Venezuelan regime and could potentially result in at least difficulties for the Venezuelan regime, if not ultimate regime change.
And very briefly, Cedric, is again going back to the lens through which Mr. Trump views things. Is the end goal here something more aggressive? I mean, in terms of him claiming that Venezuela stole US oil, land, etc., is a destination down the track some kind of move by the US to get Venezuela's oil?
Yes, I think that's exactly what Mr. Trump seems to be saying. it is, his ideas are not based in complete fact. There was an expropriation back in 1976 and another one in 2007, which basically he's trying to avenge, if you will. But that is something that is, part of it. It's a commercial idea as opposed to a geopolitical one.
Well, look, Cedric, really interesting speaking with you. Always feel we learn a lot speaking with you. Have a great Christmas and thank you very much for your time. That's Cedric Leighton there, who's a military analyst and a former deputy training director of the US National Security Agency.